conference in Singapore. And let me hand it over to Lata Venkatesh for our next guest. Lata.
Yes, as we've been saying, ICICI Securities has started their 3-day conference in Singapore, and kicking off this huge investor summit both in Singapore and in Hong Kong is Chanda Kochhar herself, Managing Director and CEO of ICICI Bank, and she joins us all the way from Singapore. Chanda, good afternoon to you. Thank you very much for joining us. Green, that's the color of the markets today as they cheer both the budget as well as the impending monetary policy. On that note, what is the monetary policy looking like to you? Should we expect a cut? What are you going with?
Well, Lata, there are, if I talk about the monetary policy, you see that inflation maybe by end of this year will actually probably undershoot the target. The budget comes up with a lot of fiscal discipline. I think there is some positive movement happening around the flows to the emerging markets again. So I think those are some positives, but at the same time there are concerns about what would happen to inflation the next year given commodity prices and the pay commission and so on. But I want to actually, Lata, turn the question the other way to say, let's look at the lending rates, because that's what you always ask whenever there is a monetary policy. What will happen to my EMI rates?
Yes.
So if I talk about that, I think this year around, or this time around, the banks have actually preceded, in that sense, the monetary policy cuts. If you see from April to now, the monetary policy cut has been about 50 basis points, whereas the MCLRs of the banks have come down by about 100 basis points. So given the fact that we always used to say that it's not just the monetary policy, it's the overall cost of deposits that determines the bank's lending rates, I think, the banks have kind of proven this, that as the cost of funds went down, even though the monetary policy went down 50 basis points, even though the retail deposit rates went down about 60 basis points or so, the MCLRs have gone down 100 basis points because we got CASA, which is, indeed a lower cost of funds.
Well, you took away my next question, which was going to be exactly that. If the governor were to cut, what would bankers like you do? But then let me, ask you the follow-up. Therefore, would you say that the governor therefore should not waste his cut, and he may choose not to waste the cut and probably give cuts in April or so? Is that the baseline expectation you're going with?
Well, I don't know, Lata. I would really never second-guess a regulator. As I said, there are a lot of points that are actually moving quite positively, and which are the inflation, the reinforcement of the fiscal prudence of the budget, and so on. But whether RBI looks at it as this year's inflation, next year's inflation, but I would say that I think currently for the customers, it's the lending rate that is important, and the lending rate has already kind of come down.
Okay. Well, what's your sense about the large increase in savings that you yourself reported? 44% is your current and savings account now. How much of the newly acquired savings will stay, you think? 10%, 30%, 50%?
Our CASA ratio is actually now almost close to 49%. So yes, a very, very robust increase in the CASA ratio. See, some part of this increase will definitely stay in the formal sector, because this is just dormant savings of people, that have come into the formal sector, and that's very good for the economy. Some part of it will go back into circulation, and which is what it should be, because that is what creates the multiplier impact on the economy. So very difficult to assign a percentage currently, Lata. I think we'll have to watch this quarter. But definitely the increase in the CASA base will happen and will be meaningful. Really, I think it's going to be too early to assign any specific percentages here. But the other thing I would say is that as the formal savings go up, in fact, it will mean an increase for the entire financial services business, not just deposits, insurance, asset management, and so on.
Well, time permitting, I'll return to this, but more quickly on the follow-through of the budget. there has been a discussion of the bad bank, or what they called a public sector ARC, in the economic survey. We are lately getting feelers from the government that they may not hurry with it and may want the Reserve Bank's tools to be followed through. What's your sense? Nevertheless, will a PARA or a public sector ARC or a bad bank in some form help?
See, my belief always has been that the focus should be resolution. And I think that is very important. Then, whether it happens within the bank balance sheets or whether it happens in a separate entity outside the bank balance sheets, I think that's not material. What is material is, will the entire ecosystem move towards resolution? And I think that is what we should focus on. If we focus on resolution, even from the bank balance sheets, we can resolve these issues. If we don't allow resolution to happen, then even if we park them somewhere else, I don't think that's really creating the productive use out of the assets. So my focus always has been that, yes, recognition of NPAs is one issue. I think recognition has been happening. We should all focus on resolution. For focus on resolution, we have to, of course, use the RBI tools to the extent possible, but also, we've got to get the entire banking system to move quickly towards decision making. We have to have the judicial system move in tandem and so on. So I think resolution is very important. To me, the rest of it is really form.
So you don't want another form, you're saying? The forms that you have are good enough?
No, I'm saying the form really does not matter, because it does not change the productive use of the asset. So it has to be more resolution. But if this form can expedite, decision making and resolution in some way, then it would be useful. So if one can say that, all the bank credit to a particular case therefore moves under one umbrella, and therefore it's easier and faster to resolve, then maybe it's useful. But we should first figure what will be our method of resolution, our approach towards resolution. Only then we should decide on the form.
Oh, so I'm not able to make out. So you would think then a structure like this is welcome, public sector ARC?
See, provided we back it up with focus on resolution. That's what I'm saying. Because otherwise, if you see the current ARCs, I don't think the debt aggregation has happened. I don't think too much of resolution has happened. So I'm saying if we back it up with a focus on resolution, then yes. Otherwise, the form itself is not going to help.
Okay. So what's your sense? Is resolution happening? Should we hear of some happy cases from you in particular, or from the bankers in general?
The 2-3 large cases that we have been talking about, I think those should very soon come to a kind of conclusion. Some of the large sales that we spoke about, of the cement company, of some other company, I think they are all moving well as far as the regulatory approvals are concerned. So, we are quite hopeful that one by one those deals should get concluded. I think as far as the rest of the cases are concerned, the banks are really meeting frequently, meeting together, trying to resolve. But, it does take time for these decisions to happen. It does take time for, either to find buyers or to get the promoters to bring in more equity. So I don't think we can, really predict which quarter what resolution will take place. We just have to keep working hard towards it.
Okay, well, I'm tempted to ask this. Your own stock has gone up like a rocket from, late last month. All of February, I think the stock has shot up from, 265 levels to 290 levels or something. It's like a 15% rally in your stock in the last 3 or 4 days. And today, JP Infra stock is up 15%. The market is very much looking for a resolution on that counter. Should we expect one?
Lata, I generally would not want to talk company specific, but just on this, there's one deal which is already public knowledge, so that one can talk about, which is the sale of Jayaprakash cement assets to Ultratech. So, I mean, that deal is moving. It's going through its regulatory approval. So, but beyond that, I will not talk any company specific.
Okay, but can we
details.
expect resolutions in steel?
So the banks are kind of working towards it, but you have to remember that in every resolution, we must follow the due process. We have to look at all the options that are available to us and then decide. So I think as we look at each and every option, as we look at the various options, I would say that it is taking a little bit of time for all of us to sit together and arrive at decisions in each of these cases.
A final question.
The good point I would say here is that steel companies, but I must say that the steel companies are making EBITDA. The steel companies are servicing part of the interest towards the loan. So I think there is definitely an upward movement.
Okay, that's positive. A final question. Even in tough times, the private sector banks have gone ahead and done a lot of M&As. We already know about that Kotak deal now that's over a year old. We have very strong cues from IndusInd coming. You all have been in the forefront in M&A. Should we hear from you?
M&A always depends on the strategic requirements of each entity at that point in time, given the requirement for scale, the opportunity that you get. I always say that we are always open to it, but at the same time, I must say that there's nothing that we are looking at as of now.
All right. That's most helpful. Thank you very much, Chanda Kochhar, and have a great investor meet out there. Come back with good news